I know, but I stuttered. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Waiver Watch episode 7. On December 29th, 2019, we are 107waivers.com, and each week we bring you some of the most interesting waivers that were approved by the FAA on the previous week. So this is exciting. This is our last Waiver Watch episode of 2019. We thought we were going to go out with a bang, but unfortunately the FAA has let us down with the number of presents they put underneath our holiday trees.
Our waiver tree.
Our waiver tree, yes. So we'll get into that. But before we do, let's jump into our sponsors for the week. Each week we go through an acronym that is commonly used in the industry, and we explain that to you. So this week's acronym, brought to you by the Sesame Street letters ADSB, is Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast. So, Jakey, fill me in just a little bit. What is this ADSB thing?
Yeah, so ADSB, it's a term that is used a lot in the unmanned aircraft industry. It essentially is manned aircraft reporting their positions, and that can go to other aircraft flying around or ATC and so on. So they send, a location, an altitude, sometimes a call sign.
Ooh.
And it just gets broadcasted. And if you're properly equipped, you can see all those people broadcasting. So,
this sounds really interesting and cool. It probably ties straight into remote ID. That's been the hot topic this week. So,
yes,
we'll save that for another episode. We definitely have some things coming out about remote ID. So make sure you check back with our podcast, our website, and our YouTube channel to catch up on that. But
indeed.
Let's jump into it. Jakey, hit us off with the waiver totals. What is the number that I'm so not excited about?
I know. Yeah, so the FAA was doing so good. They had 43 approved, 42 one week. Is man, they're really pushing hard.
Mm-hmm.
And this week they had 10. That's
Whoa,
right. 1,
10.
0. And they were all night waivers. So
okay.
There was nothing even exciting about those 10 waivers. So a couple thoughts, of course there was Christmas holiday, which happy holidays to everybody, by the way. Hope you had a good relaxing week, because the FAA surely did, but that was certainly in this time period. So we have to account for that. However, I know the FAA was working on Monday because we were kind of made aware of somebody getting an RFI, not for one of ours, but just a friend. So I know they were working. So maybe the theory I have is that the database guy was on vacation.
Yeah.
So, maybe they were approving waivers, but the database guy just didn't update the website. So hopefully that's the case.
And you had a hunch, right? You had a hunch that maybe next week we'll just see this huge blast of approvals that are actually delayed. And, and also too, sometimes the database doesn't get updated, but the people receiving the waivers get the notification that they're good to go. So even though it's not public facing, the people that approved or got approved waivers, they might get a notification 2 to 3 days earlier before it even displays on the FAA waiver site. So,
and that's actually why we release these on Sundays, but we actually do the count approximately a week and a half earlier, because we know that Thursdays and Fridays, it's just like a delay. There's always a 2 or 3 day delay between approval and when they get on the table. So
those Thursdays and Fridays, those are the hot days for the tables to be updated. That's where you see the bulk of the updates come through. The 20 to 30s waivers approved are getting updated on those 2 days.
Yeah.
So
cool. we'll update you guys next week on if the totals change this week at all.
So since we had a lull in the 10 waivers approved this week, Jakey did some digging, and he dug all the way back to a waiver issued in 2016. It was the 108th waiver started, maybe not issued, but at least the 108th unique waiver started. So this is
the oldest waiver in the table. So yes, it has the number 108, but sometimes maybe the previous ones didn't get approved, or people never finished the application, whatever. But this is the oldest one in the table that we could find. So it went to a company named Sky 11 LLC. And there's a couple interesting things about this waiver. So it is a waiver to 107.29 daylight ops. But we kind of picked out 4 interesting things here about this, and we'll go through them. So I'll take the first one, and Brent will wrap it up here. But the first one is that it's a certificate of waiver or authorization. Newer waivers are just simply certificates of waivers. So that kind of caught our eye, and when you read a little bit more, it actually turns out that the first batch, there was like a whole bunch of waivers approved on August 29th of 2016. And it turns out that first batch, they were all 333 exemptions. So as the rules came out, Part 107 that is, the FAA had all these exemptions, 333 exemptions, like sitting in the queue. And at some point they just decided, okay, these are waivers from here on out. So that, and it actually says that, the waiver, it says basically, we noticed that you submitted a 333 exemption, but to make the process faster for you, we're just going to do a Part 107 waiver.
Right. They've taken the liberty to upgrade that request.
Yep. So just kind of interesting how this all that first batch kind of came about, and it was all attorneys writing them still and so on. So jumping into that second point there. So a lot of these early waivers were written by the same person, or at least facilitated by the same person, usually like an attorney, and they were listed as a responsible party. So you had attorneys that had, 4 or 5 responsible parties for different companies. And this is not the case anymore. The FAA doesn't really, if you check now, you're not going to see multiple 107.29s assigned to the single person. It's company based. It's usually like 1 night waiver per person. So, it's a good thing that this is not happening anymore, because really a lawyer or an attorney shouldn't really be the responsible person for your aircraft operations. Right.
Unless, of course, they're, part of your company, then that makes sense. But, that's one interesting thing as well that has changed significantly is, so if I go apply for 2 more night waivers for someone else and put my name as the responsible party, it won't fly. So,
we've seen them actually deny them, or they actually like send an email to you like, how come you're asking for this twice?
Yeah.
Like you already have one. It's like, what
they won't necessarily deny you straight up. Well, if you have all the required information, they might inquire why. We noticed that you have this company and you have this private, maybe it's just your person, right? You're an operator of a company, and then you're a personal operator, and they'll be like, hey, your name's in here twice. Why is this? And they're like, we'll take the liberty of deleting one of these. Put the one in that you really want. So,
well, and that's an important point, maybe, that waivers are tied to a person, not a company. So if you, the responsible person, have a waiver, it doesn't really matter actually what company or who you're flying for. It's tied to you. So that's actually kind of an interesting point as well.
Although you do have to make sure there's some continuity between the company name and your documents. So, at the end of the day, it's the responsible person. And you can also, let's say say you're a UAS manager for a company, right? And you are the responsible person. And then you change roles and someone else comes in. You can update that role to a different responsible person. So this is like another thing is, once the waiver is approved, you can switch out the responsible persons if there's shifts in the management or anything of your companies. Good point too. You're right, because sometimes the waivers actually specify like certain documents or certain operations manuals or whatever. So good point as well. It's tricky. So, and then the last thing is, many of the provisions that are found in the early 2016 waivers are almost identical, if not identical, to most of the provisions that are currently in the 107.29s that are being approved. There's 13 in the current ones that are getting approved, and in this 2016 version, there was only 11. However, they're very similar. I don't know, Jake, if you want to kind of delve into that a little bit, maybe talk about that 200-foot structure rule that was in this one.
Yeah, sure. So some of the provisions are like word for word exactly the same as they are today. So I would say that's like actually pretty impressive. The FAA had pretty good foresight on kind of structuring those.
Right.
And they were very careful when they picked that language. On the other hand, maybe that's a sign that things aren't moving very fast. But I mean, it is regulations, so it is what it is. But yeah, so kind of one of the maybe most interesting provisions that's different than today is they had a provision about you may not fly higher than 200 feet above a structure. So 107.51 Bravo, you can fly 400 feet above a structure normally. And for some reason, they limited it to 200 feet on the first batch. And that went away. So clearly at some point, somebody went like, why does it matter? If this was 200 or 400 feet at night. So
right. And it's probably because someone just did a little bit more risk analysis. And after the FAA was comfortable with this, 200 foot rule restriction on top of a structure, they said, hey, the risk is not going to increase dramatically. We're okay with removing that and just keeping, for simplicity's sake, we'll just keep it the same as daylight operations, So,
yep. Yeah. And this waiver, by the way, is still valid. So Sky 11, they're out there. They're probably still flying on this waiver, which is
August 2020, cool. Right?
Yeah, so, exactly. So they got a whole nother year, and so it's pretty cool.
So they're kind of like the OG night waiver guys right there, guys and gals. So it's pretty impressive, and it's still, like you said, it's valid for today still, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that kind of wraps up this somewhat of a dull week of approvals, but hopefully you guys learned a little bit more about some interesting things about the previous 107.29 waivers approved back in the day, 2016. But again, keep an eye out. We're going to be posting some opinions and some facts behind remote ID to kind of shed a different light that's maybe being overburdened by a lot of negativity surrounding the new announcement of the remote ID. So check back. We'll have some good news and why remote ID is good and some of the things that we should be actually happy that are being proposed in this rule.
Yeah. And early 2020, like January, we're going to do kind of a special episode of Waiver Watch to summarize the year 2019. Just kind of, take a look at all the waivers that were approved in the year, what kinds, how many, maybe and there's some trends we can figure out. Yep.
Yeah. And why it's so awesome, right?
Yeah. So, there's a lot that's good. So we're going to do a special episode, so stay tuned for that as well. But yeah, this is it for 2019. So
perfect.
It's a good year.
Fly safe. Talk to you guys later.
See you next time.